And it is a good morning, and we wish all of you a good morning. The sun is shining here in the middle of the heartland in the state of Missouri, and we have a pretty day. And it is a good morning, and you're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning, where talk is real, truth is in the talk, and there is power, absolute power in truth. And we believe Power Talks, and we believe the truth will set you free. Good morning, Melody.
And good morning to you, and good morning to the listeners.
And did you have a wonderful weekend?
Weekends are always wonderful. Always.
I did travel. As I said, I was going to go see my daughter-in-law, who is she has her PhD in physical therapy, and have her analyze my broken arm. And I kept hearing the same thing. You need to be patient. You need to be patient. You need to be patient. So, bones take time. So I'm practicing my patience.
Good.
But anyway, we had a good time. Had some playtime with a couple of granddaughters, and they feed me good when I go down there, which is not necessarily a good thing, but they feed me good. So we had a good time. We got back yesterday evening about 6 o'clock, I think. So we are here today.
Good. Good.
So,
absolutely.
So anyway, that was my weekend. I know everybody really cared what Beth did with her weekend. So.
We care. I worked.
Yeah.
I worked. So
you worked.
That's what I did. And I have no life. My life is discount gold and silver trading. 1-800-375-4188. That's 1-800-375-4188. I guess I have my family and I have my little Ruby, but other than that, it's discount gold and silver. And, I made a commitment to my clients a very long time ago that I would be here till the end, that we would tell you when it's time to buy, time when to sell, and maybe when it's even time to trade. Though those times are rare, but sometimes it can benefit people's portfolio if they do trade here and there. So we don't, have you trade just so we can create a trade and everybody, we make money and it's a bad trade for you. Usually when anybody gets a phone call from a dealer wanting you to trade, or anything. If a dealer calls you, hang up on them, because they don't have your interest at heart. It is their interest. And I always hear, "Oh, we got such a great deal." Well, if you got such a great deal, why are they calling you?
Yeah.
So, and I've never. When a customer has brought, they'll call me and say, well, so-and-so called me and they want me to do this and this and this. It's a good trade. So I'll sit down and I'll work the numbers and I'll tell them the numbers, and, they're making tons of commissions, and it's never, ever have I've ever come across a good trade. The only time that I ever have heard of a good trade, of a dealer doing a good trade, is myself. Because it has to be good for the customer before I suggest that they trade. And so when I recommend a trade, then that's one that you should pay attention to. And I recently been suggesting that, with the low premiums on $20 gold pieces, if you have a lot of oodles and oodles of bullion coins, trade them. It's a great time to be picking up some $20 gold pieces when the premiums are at 20-year lows, and they provide you privacy, performance, and protection. And so, you get a few extra benefits, and the key thing is also the performance. I've seen some of these $20 gold pieces and this fractional pieces. When gold moved $80, I saw $400 and $500 moves in these coins. They really do move in a panic-driven market, and that's the key. If you expect them to move when we're more in a greed-driven market, which is what I think we are in now, and that's why we've seen the premiums drop on them. You still get the privacy and the protection, but you don't really get that performance. But in a fear-driven market, that's when they go crazy. That's when all bets are off the table, and they can do some tremendous increases in their premiums. Like the $65 $20 gold piece, you can pick them up at $2,600 today. During 2010, 2011, they were selling for $5,500. So, there's incredible buys out there. And, I hear people, and it irritates me, it fits some folks when you're purchasing gold and silver, but I hear them say, oh, you just need some coins for trading. Gold and silver is much more than trading. We have a great article in our newsletter today about the healthcare industry and the increased premiums. Folks, we're facing and let's just say all the tax cuts and infrastructure spending and everything. Folks, that's highly inflationary. Our dollar is getting weaker and weaker. It's going to take more of those dollars to buy those things. And inflation. And if you have your every day your cash that you have, your IRAs, your pensions, you're just losing against inflation. I don't care how, and people don't understand that relationship. And certainly there's not a knee-jerk reaction every time, but over an extended long period of time, gold is a great hedge against inflation. It's the insurance policy. It's wealth. You think your paper dollars are wealth? You're sadly mistaken. They're nothing but paper. And there will be a day, and I think a day pretty soon, where gold will regain, not that it's ever lost, but in the investment world it will regain its status as the only place to be in these troubled financial times that we're going to face. And if people don't think debt's an issue, well, I call me, and we'll talk about it. So I didn't mean to go off on a gold and silver thing this morning.
No,
but
that's good because I wanted to know what's been going on. We've been watching the NASDAQ. They've been watching all the stock markets up and down and up and down. And I had kind of wondered how things were going with the gold on Friday. I kind of missed out on the close of the day as to what everything ended up. So.
We had a little bit of pressure on gold on Friday, and this morning it's up, almost $5. But the stock markets are heading higher. We'll probably hit new highs and so forth. But I just go back to it's inflation.
Right, exactly.
It's a repatriation of that money coming back into the States, that is going into buyback shares. It's the promises of untold wealth, money being spent on infrastructure. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for anything anymore. Just hope. Just hope.
Hanging on to all that hope. Yeah.
So there's no fundamentals underneath it. And again, I go to Venezuela. Their stock markets are high, but yet people can't get a buck out of their ATM machines. So they're fighting in the street for food. So that shows you there is no connection anymore to these stock markets, to what's really happening in the economies today and how people are really being affected. And, I was talking to someone this morning where a family member was getting anywhere from a $4 savings to a $100 savings on their paychecks. And that's great. It's super. But what's it going to cost? It's going to cost something in the future. So either, in 8 years when these tax cuts expire, corporations keep it, but if they make them, somebody has to pay for it. Doesn't anybody get that?
It always happens that way, doesn't it?
That way. So, enjoy it now while you can, because I do believe there's a rude awakening shortly around the corner.
I agree.
Give us a call. Give us a call at 1-800-375-4188. Make sure you go to our website and sign up for a great newsletter today, dgscoins.com, dgscoins.com.
Awesome.
Yes, Beth?
Awesome. And the newsletter is awesome. You need to make sure you sign up for the newsletter there at dgscoins.com. Sounds like you got some good stuff in there this week again. So, yeah, you do really well with that.
We do. We have Dave Allen. We have his article, and that was about the health care. And, of course, a popular, one of my favorites, again, is Doug Nolan. And we have somebody else. We put David Stockton's article last week that he wrote about debt. It kind of gives you a comparison. It gives you an idea of just how much debt we've had and that it's not good. It's not healthy. It's not a healthy economy.
It's not healthy there. It's not healthy at home. It's not healthy anywhere. We've got states that are doing the same thing the Fed's doing. We've got individuals doing the same thing, and it's you can only eventually the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back is going to break the camel's back.
Yeah, and he's bending now.
Yeah,
he's bending.
Yeah, oh my goodness, the little hump is not doing well. So. Anyway, what else is going on?
Well, I came across a great little article that about men in their prime working years have left the labor force at an astonishing rate. And
where are they going?
Oh, they're just not working.
Not working.
And they may never return if the state of the U.S. job market holds, and this is according to a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas, that there's been a decline in demand for middle-skilled work. And this is a phenomenon dubbed job polarization, because more positions are centered or basically concentrated at the higher and lower ends, which has played a role in keeping prime-age men out of the job market. Tatum Tuzman is an economist at the Kansas City Fed. He wrote this in a paper last week, and without job polarization, he estimated that 1.9 million more prime-age men would have been employed in 2016. So the shift, we're experiencing the shift in skills, and I think that's a lot that's going on. Middle-skilled jobs are those that often involve routine tasks. They're procedurally or rule-based, making them easier to automate. And again, here we come back with the automation, technology. Low-skilled jobs are mostly service-orientated, and high-skilled jobs involve analytical or managerial skills, both of which involve responsibilities that are more difficult to replace with a machine or a computer. So again, I don't think this is much of a surprise as we see technology taking the place of many, many jobs. And I kind of disagree with that a little bit as far as the low-skilled jobs. I don't know, these fast food restaurants and stuff like that, I mean, they're basically getting technology to replace workers. So I can't imagine that being middle-skilled jobs as being flipping burgers, but, maybe it is in today's world. Maybe they've changed the definitions anymore of what fits into those categories as low-skilled, middle-skilled, and high-skilled. And a lot of it has to do, of course, with immigration and the H-1B visas and so forth. And but the participation rate of prime-age men, those 25 to 54-year-olds, has steadily decreased in the last half-century. As of January, 89% of prime-age men were in the labor force, and that's down from around 97% following World War II. So again, this does not fit well for the future of this country. And that was according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That report also includes people who are working or unemployed and actively looking for a job. International trade and weaker unions have also contributed to the departure of men from the labor force, particularly as manufacturing jobs have moved to countries with lower wages, and the men who have left the workforce are unlikely to return if labor conditions remain the same, possibly due to the lack of available jobs suitable for their skills. So, again, issues that are facing this country. For jobs, for wages, and that doesn't set well for the amount of debt. And
that's very important. I mean, that's something that we're trying to strive to improve, and yet we see that it's still a struggle, and of course we know it's going to be a struggle for a long time. I hear music in the background. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. The number to call is 717-300-1218. That's 717-300.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a reestablished Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann in the morning. We've had a weekend, and I usually try to take a little break from all the news on the weekend. But I couldn't help but notice, and it just goes on and on and on. I couldn't help but notice that they're still throwing the blame game around with the tragedy in Florida. And, of course, now they're going after the governor is going after, or there's been 74 Florida Republicans that have called on the governor to remove the sheriff, that they're upset with the sheriff. And, of course, we talked last week, they had discovered that they discovered that one of the deputies was there and didn't go into the school when the shooting was going on. And we also found out that they have real-time video, and it was off by, I don't remember how many minutes, but quite a bit. And so that wasn't helpful. And, they just keep blaming everyone. I don't know whether they should get rid of the sheriff or not. That's usually up to the people the next time he's up for a re-election. But, they're blaming everyone, pointing their fingers at everyone except the shooter. Everything is, they blame the NRA. They're boycotting the NRA, which is backfiring on them. And now they're going after the sheriff. And I saw some pictures. That they had posted of the sheriff, and he's apparently it was in pretty thick with the Clintons and some of the other Democrats, and had him, he had pictures with them, and and all that. And I'm thinking, I don't care who he voted for. I don't care who he voted for. You care about whether he's going to take care of your community or the county, and that's what ought to be important. And anyway, so that's still going on and on and on, and it's it's so ridiculous that it's almost funny. It's not funny because lives were lost, but the fact that they want to blame everybody and everything except for the shooter. So anyway, that was just something I had that was kind of, you know, it's the same old same thing. You know, same old. Every time you turn on the news, it's the same old distractions, the same old rhetoric, Jabberwocky, the same old everything. You know that they immediately when that happened, the NRA, the left were screaming NRA has blood on their hands, which of course that's not the case. And they went after, you and I talked about how viciously they went after Senator Rubio and Dana Loesch. And it's, like I said, they're blaming everyone except the shooter. The shooter had no responsibility, I guess, whatsoever. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that all of a sudden now they want the sheriff to be fired. The deputy that was there, he was put on leave, and then he later resigned on his own reconnaissance. So it's a sad deal.
You know, it really is true. I mean, they need to find, you know, someone to blame, and you know, usually it's. But there were a lot of people, and you're right. But there were
a lot of failures. There were a lot of
failures. But again, you're going to continue to have a lot of these failures because no one is ever held accountable for their previous bad performances. I mean, it's no one gets fired anymore. No one is held to a higher standard in their work performance. And I'm not saying everywhere and, you know, so forth, but that really is a big problem. And you certainly have, you know, it's because government's gotten involved.
But I guess
government.
One of my points would be, or one of my questions would be, is that really the position of the governor to take out an elected official, which is the sheriff? Yeah, we had a tragedy. They had a tragedy, and yeah, there was failures. I mean, there was failures everywhere. More legislation isn't going to fix it if you still have the human failure element, which you're always going to have.
That's my point. I'm talking about the failures. I'm not talking about going after an elected official. I'm talking about why we have the failures.
Yeah.
You know, and the failures are is no one previously has been held accountable for their poor performance in their workplace. You know, we see it everywhere. You know, and it's you know, it's. You know, you can call it again. If you go to Las Vegas, the same thing there. There was, you know, signs that, you know, the, you know, FBI failed, or whoever controls the, you know, the background checks and so forth. They failed. The signs, you know, were there, and so again, it's, you know, look how so many of these things. Look how these cities are run. No one's held accountable for the failure of these cities, the debt that they've created, the underfunding of the pension plans, and you know, every once in a while you might find somebody that is a scapegoat that you know, will get in trouble for mismanagement of these funds and so forth. But usually they've, you know, absconded with money and so forth. So. Again, people need to start being held accountable. You know, you have these kids that go to these psychiatrists. They get slugged on medications. Well, you know what? Maybe their ability to analyze, maybe they're not the best. You know, maybe their medical licenses should be, you know, compromised some way if they fail to recognize, you know, a behavior.
Well, firing the sheriff if they try to go through, the governor to do it. That's one thing, but you know, being held accountable by the people, I think, is even a better thing. So I'm not, you know, I understand what you're saying, and I agree 100%. People aren't held responsible. Now they're trying to just throw the blame game, and the governor needs to take action and kick him out of office, and this and that and that and this, and it's I don't know how that's really supposed to work. I don't think it's supposed to work that direction, but you know, it's been a tragedy, and it's something that's gone on, and he needs to be held responsible if he did let the ball drop, and I think the people will hold him responsible. I think they will.
But elected officials, don't they have bosses too?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Elected officials, don't they have bosses too, other than the people? Well, then then the governor should come in and say, well, we're going to have an election and let the people decide. Maybe they should call a
special election.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how long his term is. It may be up this year. I mean, I have no clue. But my point was, and you're correct, people aren't held responsible anymore. And the one who actually did the shooting, nobody's talking about him. They're talking about everybody else. Where, of course, the ball was dropped, things could have been handled differently. And had they been handled differently, might not have had this tragedy. But at the same time, I'm wondering if that's really the responsibility of the governor right now, or should this, the people elected this man. They thought he was, I'm sure the deputy wasn't appointed. I mean, they usually hire the deputies. They're not elected. The sheriff is elected. So, they're calling for everything else to make them feel like they're doing something. People need to do a lot of firing when we go into that voter booth. There's a lot of people who need to be fired. Not just the sheriff there, maybe.
The shooter should be hung by his toes in public square, as far as I'm concerned. And but anyway,
yeah, nobody's talking about
that. Sounds a little harsh. Yeah, no one's talking about that, and
Yeah, but nobody talks about him. Well, I noticed that the boycott. I thought about this when we talked a little bit about that on Friday. I thought later, in fact, while we were traveling, I told my husband, "Well, this is what ought to happen." But you were telling about the boycotts on the NRA, and that the Enterprise was no longer going to honor the NRA cards that for the discount. Well, somebody else ought to pick that up and go run with it. We're going to honor their cards and pick it up and run with it. Like Hertz Rent-A-Car. I don't even know if they even still exist. Some of these others, that they ought to get up and run with it. But anyway, the boycott, I have an article here from the Daily Caller. The boycott on the NRA is backfiring. And it's kind of interesting how people react to situations. But anyway, it's kind of it's backfiring on them, and it's not doing what they expected it to do. But so the NRA is not going to be hurt, which I never figured they would be. But it's interesting, I guess, how people react. But Mexico is not getting along well with President Donald Trump, because they really thought he would back off on this wall, and he's not backing off on his wall. So they have canceled another meeting that they were supposed to have. They canceled back in, when was that? I can't remember if that was January or when it was. January. They canceled back in January of 2017, and now they're supposed to be meeting again, and they're canceling it again. And it says the cancellation also comes as a North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, renegotiations talks continue, and so the president of Mexico is I guess he's boycotting Donald Trump. President Donald Trump canceled his meeting, hurt his feelings.
Well, I also saw a report that Mexico now is buying an ag product from Brazil instead of the United States. That's their choice. That's their right. But we don't know what type of impact that. Do you
know what the product was? Because I hadn't heard.
I can't recall it. I can't recall it off the top of my head. It was just an ag product, that they're buying from Brazil versus the U.S. So it can have a
trickle down effect, or trickle up, or whatever.
Well, no, it can also backfire. So,
absolutely.
We'll just have to see. This report just came out. The U.S. Supreme Court declined today to hear the Trump administration's appeal of a federal judge ruling that requires the government to keep DACA going. Under a lower court order that remains in effect, the Department of Homeland Security must continue to accept applications to renew DACA status from the roughly 700,000 young people known as Dreamers who are currently enrolled. The administration's deadline of March 5th, when it intended to shut the program is now largely meaningless. In a brief order, the court said simply, it is assumed the Court of Appeals will act expeditiously. I'm trying to read this to see what else it has to say to decide this case. The court's denial was expected because the justices rarely accept appeals asking them to bypass the lower courts. The program, again, we know what the program is. On January 9th, a federal judge in San Francisco ruled in favor of the University of California and its president, its former Homeland Security Secretary, Janet Napolitano. They sued to keep the program going after Trump administration said in September it would end in 6 months. So
that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like the DACAs will continue. And
well, we got to have something to fight about. Got to have something to keep fighting about. You know, sometimes just reading the headlines is enough to make you just want to pull your hair out. I have, and this is from the Daily Caller, but you can pick any network of news, and you know, when you get the downloads and you get them in your email, they'll show you all the articles that they're posting. So just the headlines. Here's this Michael Wolff. You remember he wrote the book. He walks off a TV set after questions about Trump's affair claims, because, you know, he lied in all that in his book. His book was nothing but a bunch of lies. He claimed he walked off because he couldn't hear the question, but they found out later that was far from the truth. And there we got one here. I thought, well, my goodness, here we go with the Me Too. The shocking history of sexual misconduct within James Comey's FBI. Boycotts against, and of course I had that one already that I actually downloaded. I didn't download all of these and read all of them. I was just looking at the highlights of the titles, and the one is on the NRA. The boycotts have backfired. And then the Broward County sheriff denies mishandling the shooting response. He's defending himself. And here's a dreamer who was arrested for threatening to shoot all of the bees at a New York high school. And the top Clinton aide says that Facebook helped Trump win and demands investigation. So that's what we need. We need to go investigate Facebook over our voting, because we know the Russians used them. And Gorsuch holds the key to one of the Supreme Court's biggest cases, and there are some big cases coming up, as you know. It just goes on and on and on. You know, it's got another one here where the testosterone pump transgender wrestler wins the state title for a second consecutive year. The ridiculousness and some of the things that are going on, just looking at the titles of these things, you just wonder, who are we? People don't even know who they are anymore. Who are we that we put up with such stupidity? Just out-and-out stupidity. Remember when they used to get in trouble for using the drugs to enhance anything when they were in the sports, and now they want transgenders and anybody can do anything, and which means they can take these drugs and they can be bigger, better, stronger, faster, and win the goal. Anyway, I thought it was kind of unusual. I was sometimes just reading the titles is all you need to turn you off.
Well, true. I mean, but I think that I don't think this is just I don't think this about the Supreme Court is just a headline. This is a headline.
No, it's not. My question
is, in relationship to what you're saying too, this is from NBC News. Florida's school shooting survival released from hospital. Watch live.
Oh my gosh!
Are you kidding me? We're going to watch live a patient being released from hospital.
Must be a short news day.
Or what? Oh my
no
God.
Privacy for these people. None. It's sad too. It really is.
But
what was that?
No. So what's next?
What's next? Well, this is something I found interesting, and it's really in depth, and I didn't get to read it in depth, and But it is the weaponizing of the EPA is over. You know, they really are trying, and they're not quite there yet. This was an exclusive interview with Scott Pruitt by Rob Bluey, and this is coming from the Daily Signal, which is part of the Heritage Foundation. It says in his first year as an administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Scott Pruitt has already transformed the agency in many ways. He spoke exclusively to the Daily Signal, and it's got the questions and his responses in this particular article. And I would encourage people to look at it. It's got a lot of good stuff. There's a long way to go yet because the EPA has been so deeply embedded and going after we the people. But one of his first questions, he says, you gave a speech last year at CPAC where you were just at the beginning of your tenure in the Environmental Protection Agency, and you outlined some of the things that you wanted to do. Here we are in the next year. He says you've repealed and taken back 22 regulations at a savings of $1 billion, which is a significant contribution to the U.S. economy. And he said President Donald Trump likes to talk about that. And he goes, what does it mean? And Pruitt was pretty excited about some of the things they have done and things that where they're going with this. And this is stuff that really is important. Not that the other things aren't important, but these are things that we don't hear on a daily basis from Fox or mainstream media or any of those. You know, you just don't hear about this. And this is what's really affecting the people. This is what's affecting the ranchers, the farmers, anybody that has land, anybody that has a business. The EPA has been going at them, and they're trying. One of the things that I know that they're wanting to do is to bring it down on a state-to-state level, and they've got to do a lot of downsizing to get it to that point. This is one I put a star by his response to. It says here, the Bluey asked him, he said, President Trump cited a number of examples that have come out of the EPA in his speech at the CPAC. And he says, talk about those two issues. And he goes on, well, one was the Paris Climate Treaty. And Pruitt said that the president's decision to exit the Paris Accord was tremendously courageous. He says, when you look at that decision, it put America first, which is what the president said in the Rose Garden in June that he was going to do. He said what was decided in Paris under the past administration was not about carbon reduction. It was about penalties to our own economy because China and India, under the accord, didn't have to take any steps to reduce the CO2 until the year 2030. So it is really about CO2 reductions, if it was. He said, so if it's really about CO2 reductions, why did they let that happen? He says, when you look at who's led the world in the CO2 reduction, it's us, it's the U.S. And from the year 2000 to 2014, we reduced our CO2 footprint almost 20%. Anyway, it was all about punishing the United States, which has been one of the leaders in cleaning up the air and reduction of the CO2. And it's always unfair, and he was really praising Donald Trump for making the courageous step that he did to back out of the Paris Agreement. And I know a lot of people had misgivings about that, and a lot of us were cheering him on. I was a little bit worried because I know his daughter was against it, and I don't think she understood the whole concept of what's going on. I know she didn't. And anyway, so this is a pretty good article. I would encourage people to download this article from the Heritage Foundation. I think it's got a lot of information, kind of tells you where they are and where they're trying to go with scaling back the EPA, which we all know needs to be done that drastically. Are you there? I think I lost you.
Yes, I'm here. Well, I was waiting for you to tell us some of the things because there's a lot of folks that don't have computers and they can't get the...
Okay, well, it's like 7 pages long, so I was just kind of highlighting on it. The one was with the reduction of the CO2, and pulling out of the Paris Agreement was something that was really huge. It was a big step. So what this article is questions and answers. The interviewer puts what he said, and then he answers it. Let me read another one here that I kind of highlighted. Where is it? Well, here's something that Pruitt said. He said, we're going through a process right now that by the end of this year, every decision we make on a permit at the agency will be done within 6 months. Before, he stated in here that permits, which you know how I feel about permits anyway, they were taking 10, 12, and 15 years. He says they're going to be done within 6 months, up or down. One way or the other, you know, they're going to be a decision made in 6 months. He says now states do it all the time. States have processes in which, you know, they have to submit permits or whatever. Anyway, he said, so if they can do it, we can do it. And that was one of the things they're going to do to kind of stop all this red tape. Because he said, here's what he says, we're getting accountability across the country in regions and in headquarters, and it's going to be done by the end of the year. But he was talking about this process, when it takes 10 to 12, 15 years, that's not permits. That's obstruction. And we know that has been the case in many of the businesses that have to deal with the EPA, that, you know, 10 to 12, 15 years waiting on a permission to do something, you know, that's obstruction. And that's exactly what they were trying to do with the EPA through the Obama administration and beyond, before Obama was even there. Another one here that I highlighted was that he said, the interviewer said, last fall you took action on sue and settle. And this was something that I was not quite understanding because I was reading it in a big hurry. But he says, you decided to end that practice. And what has that meant in the months since you've taken that action? Well, apparently that they can just sue. He goes, well, Rob, you get this. He said, but how damaging was that to rulemaking? When the sue and settle practice, in other words, they go behind closed doors, he was saying, and they make this little settlement. He says a third-party group comes in and sues the agency, goes into a courtroom somewhere in the country, agrees to a substantiated rule in the course of that settlement, puts it into consent decree, and then goes all over the country and says, this is what we have to do across the country. In other words, I think I hear music. When they get sued, that becomes a precedent, obviously, and then they go around the country and say, this is what you have to do. You have to go in there and sue them, and then you get this settlement, and that's how they were making legislation.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks with Melody and Beth Ann. In the morning, Melody was telling me about another strike that's going on when we were on the commercial break. Melody.
Yeah, we had West Virginia's public school teachers. They all walked out. Actually, they walked out last week, and they're going to continue their walkout as they are trying to get more money.
Money.
They closed schools for a third day.
Wow.
I guess they did get a raise. They talked all weekend long. This is West Virginia's public school. And they hit the picket lines first on Thursday. In all of the state's 55 counties, they demanded better pay and benefits. So they did get a little bit of a raise, but teachers said, that's not enough. We want more. And like I said, more money. And there was an art teacher at Riverside High School in Bell, which I don't understand why he would qualify for WIC, which is a Women, Infants, and Children Food Nutrition Service. But he says that he's working 2 jobs. He still qualifies for WIC and food stamps. We collected on the WIC, so that's how low teacher pay is. There were a lot of times where we got to choose between groceries and health coverage for my family. This is just an issue of a bunch of people squabbling over a little bit of insurance benefits or a little bit of pay. We are really in a bad place here as far as that stuff goes. The governor defends the legislation. Governor Jim Justice signed legislation late Wednesday night granting teachers a 2% pay increase starting in July, followed by 1% pay increases over the next 2 years. But that's not enough. The bill did not address future concerns of teachers, including issues with the Teachers Public Employees Insurance Program, health care, and tax on payroll deduction options. So, I mean, it's a 4% over the next few years. And but you know what? In states that are strapped, it's difficult to – that's a bunch. And the teachers walked out before in 1990, and that strike lasted 11 days. And so you see these kids are out there, yay!
Strike.
Go to school. But
until they find out they got to go to school this summer, then they're not going to be yelling, yay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I got Little League baseball.
It's just another sign. It's just another sign of the times that wages, they're not going to rise, and yet all we hear about is, people are taking more disposable income home. Well, you know what? They're not. Not if they qualify for WIC programs and food stamps, and these are teachers. Teachers never got well paid, but at least they earned a decent living. It was an industry that was respected. But again, It comes along with the line. You have the Common Core. I mean, what are these teachers? The teachers don't teach anymore.
Well, it got to where the federal government got involved, and that definitely took down the efficiency.
Yeah.
And responsibility. Going back to that word, nobody's responsible. They get, and I love teachers. I mean, I think teachers, that it is a commendable, an honorable occupation. But not all of them are in there because they love those kids. they're in there. What they brag about, the 3 months off in the summer that they get. But, it's not an easy job. I will not try and even pretend that it is. It's not an easy job for the teachers. And government has made it more difficult. And, of course, they have the union. I assume this is going through the union, this strike. And sometimes they're the ones that are the real greedy ones, and they're telling the teachers this and telling the teachers that.
Yeah.
Teachers pay into those unions, and they go about. They agree with them and go along with them, whatever they tell them to do. And that is something that's going before the Supreme Court I think this week or coming up fairly soon, is forcing people to be part of the unions. So. We'll
that's one thing. It never, I could just never wrap my head around. I get it, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I never understood people who strike because the only ones that get hurt are them. People lose their home. They get behind on their payments. They get behind on their homes. It becomes a financial difficulty. If you go for a week or 2 weeks, but at one point in time, they used to have strikes that would last for months. And I get what they're striking for, but in the meantime, who truly gets penalized? And who hurts their families, and if you're already strapped for money, you're off work for a couple of weeks or months. It takes years to recuperate those losses that you incurred. So it just I just never understood, But anyway,
well, the whole idea and a lot of the strikes is make that particular industry hurt. Well. Striking at the school is kind of like striking, when they say they're going to shut the government down. It's going to be made up. They're going to get that pay back when they come back to work. It was delayed, but they're going to get that pay back, and they have to have so many school days. So they're going to, the kids may be saying, "Yay, I got out of school today," because the teachers are striking. But then when they have to go to school in June or July, they're not going to be liking it so much because it has to be made up, and they will get their money.
Well, when the government shuts down, I don't think they have to work the extra days to make back their wages. They just get it back. But these teachers would have to work the extra days.
Because the kids have to have so many days in school.
Yeah. They're just not going to get, you lost a couple of weeks of work, we're going to pay you. No, they got to make it up. And then I don't know if even some of these districts might even waive it too. But anyway.
Well, they have little ways to kind of go around that. Like if you go half day, that's considered a full day. If you go so many hours, it's considered a full day. So they won't necessarily be going full school days, but they will have to make it up eventually, somehow, some way, because it's state laws. So.
There's a great big, there's a lot of flood fears that are rising as this storm system tore across the southern and central U.S. There was a violent storm system. I don't know if you were affected with rains and fierce winds over the weekend, and they're looking that it could lead to some treacherous flooding in the days ahead. The system stretched from Texas to the Canadian Maritime provinces, left a path of destruction. You didn't really hear much people talk about this. It was all...
We had flash flooding here in Missouri. We had quite a bit of rain, and we had some flash flooding on Saturday and Friday evening.
There were 5 people that were killed, 2 in suspected tornadoes. Emergency crews struggled to keep up with the calls. Flooding is going to continue to be a threat this week as more rain falls and runoffs continue. More than 200 river gauges reported levels above flood stage from the Great Lakes to eastern Texas. So, again, a lot of flood waters on the Ohio River in Louisville and Cincinnati are at their highest level in about 20 years. And the river was forecast to reach moderate flood stage along the southern border of Ohio and West Virginia in coming days. So bodies were recovered from submerged vehicles in separate incidents in Saturday. So, folks, you need to be careful. And, I still don't understand why people drive into water. I just don't understand that.
You've never done that? I have done that, but I'm wiser now.
Of course I've done it, but I've always known what the risk was, and there's just some place where you just don't take the risk.
That's absolutely true. We were down right on the Missouri River, and you knew when it got to a certain level, you don't want to cross that. You don't want to cross that. Because that's moving water. That's what people don't understand. It's moving water. It's not just sitting still there. It is moving, and it will move your vehicle. It will flood out your brakes, and it'll move your vehicle. So you got to be careful. I don't do that anymore. I'm older and wiser now.
Well, that's good. That's good.
You try lots of things when you're younger. I can make it across that. But I was totally stupid about it. I knew when I couldn't make it across it. So.
When we're out of time.
I do hear the music. I hear the music. We have had a quick Monday. The show went fast. It just really did. You have a wonderful rest of the day, Melody.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.